Showcasing local talent, professionals, and everyday people making Salt Lake City what it is today. It's time for another episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast.
I want to welcome you guys out today to episode 141 of the I Am Salt Lake podcast. My name is Chris Hollifield. I am your host. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. I cannot urge you enough to check out the website at iamsaltlake.com. That's where you can check out all of the previous episodes, all of the conversations, all previous 140 conversations with awesome people that are doing really cool things here in Salt Lake City, Utah. This week, put up two episodes for you guys to check out. That used to be my schedule. I used to have a brand new episode up every Monday and Thursday. Then I cut it down to just Mondays, but I've been talking to so many incredible people here in Salt Lake City. I want to get some of these episodes up, so that's why I'm doing two episodes this week. And this week, I was joined by Benson. He's Fox 13's weeknight meteorologist. You can catch him Monday through Friday at 5 and 9 right there at Fox 13. And follow him on Twitter. Follow him on Facebook. I'm going to put all the links on the show notes at episode 141. If you haven't checked out the previous episode when I talked to a local stand-up Christopher James, that's the episode before this one. I cannot urge you enough to check that episode out. Hey, before I jump into the conversation with Benson, I got to give some love to our sponsors, the people that help support the podcast, the people that keep the podcast going. First off, I want to thank Tiff Blue from Peach Treats. Thank you so much for your support, your continual support of the podcast. It means so much to me. You could check out her Etsy shop at peachtreats.etsy.com. Custom ear art made right here in Salt Lake City, Utah. And she's given a special offer to the podcast listeners. That way you can support a local artist as well as supporting the podcast. Just enter in the coupon code IAMSaltLake, all one word, and you get 20% off of your entire purchase at peachtreats.etsy.com. I also want to thank the Urban Lounge. The Urban Lounge, SLC.com is the website. Thank you, Urban Lounge, for your continual support of the podcast. Check out the website, complete lineup for all the bands that are going to be playing there. A lot of really great shows, especially as we go into the summer season. A lot of bands are on tour. You can check that out at the Urban Lounge, SLC.com. Hey, speaking of summer, Crucial Fest is right around the corner. June 4th through 7th at multiple venues right in Salt Lake City. You can go to crucialfest.com, buy your wristband. I cannot urge you guys enough to get your wristband early, $30. That offer ends May 31st. After that, it's $40 the week of. So, I mean, that's going to let you into all the showcases. Great bands are playing that. I mean, Iceburn, Parallax, Red Fang, so many great bands that I am excited for, and they will be actually coming on some of the future episodes of the I Am Salt Lake podcast. So thank you so much, Tiff Blue at Peach Treats, Crucial Fest, the Urban Lounge, for your continual support. So why don't you guys join me now as I chat with Benson from Fox 13 News. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up here in Utah?
Yeah.
Let's start there.
Yeah. So I grew up in, I went to elementary school, junior high in the Cottonwood Heights area. So pretty close to Brighton High School. I went to Canyon View Elementary and then Butler Middle School, and would have gone to Brighton. But then, and all my older brothers and sisters went to Brighton. And, but then my parents actually, my dad owned his own business and he went bankrupt, or, we went bankrupt and lost the house. And, always kind of a funny story is back then, one of the places, when we were looking around to move, one of the places they found that was affordable was Park City.
Of all places.
Right. Yeah. Right. So we moved to Park City, and, I moved up there right before my freshman year. And I always say I'm from Park City because that's where I feel like I really grew up going to high school. And, but yeah, I'm Utah born and bred, and I've lived away from Utah for a few years. My wife and I lived in Portland, Oregon for a little while, and Madison, Wisconsin. But this is home.
How was it? I mean, going to high school in Park City. I mean, how long ago was that, if you don't mind me asking? I mean,
It was a long time ago. And it's funny.
Did you graduate from
Yes.
Park City High then? I mean, or is that,
Yeah.
what is a high school out there? Just Park City High?
Park City High. Yeah. And now it's much bigger than it was. When I went there, it was 500 students. I graduated in 1988, and it was 500 students. We had 100 people in our graduating class. It was 2A school. And now it's 3A, but it's a big 3A school. And if you go back to the building, there's nothing on the exterior of the building that is the same as when I went to high school there. Like, they've built a whole new high school around it. So there is zero nostalgia when you walk into the building, because it is completely different than when I was there. But going to high school there was awesome. It was great. I mean, it was one of those places. I still have some of my best friends in my life are still some friends from high school that I played basketball with and played football with, and they're still really good friends of mine.
So did you play football then at Park City High?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Other sports or no?
Football, basketball, and track.
Excellent.
Were the three sports I played there.
And do you still have family in Park City then? No.
We did up until both of my brothers had lived up there, and they both recently moved.
Okay.
So me and my mom and my dad moved up there in 1984, went to high school there, went off to college. So I, lived there a handful of years, came back after college and worked at Park City Television for a while. So that was kind of my experience there. But in the meantime, my brothers came to visit, like separately, not together. They were living, both living in different areas, and just fell in love with Park City. So they ended up moving there. My one brother both of them were married and had houses up there and everything. And they ended up living there a lot longer than I actually lived there, just because, they fell in love with it coming to visit us. So
where did you go to college then? Where did
BYU.
BYU, of all places, BYU, down to the Provo BYU or Rick's?
No.
Well, I guess Rick's College isn't Rick's College anymore.
Right.
It's BYU, Idaho.
Yeah.
What was that experience like? I mean, BYU. Were you excited for it? I mean, when you got accepted into BYU, was that an exciting moment, or were you just okay, this is going to work? It's close to home.
I played football there, so that's
BYU.
what took me there. Yeah.
Okay.
So my dad played basketball at BYU and was actually a star. I mean, there are still people to this day who know who John Benson, or Johnny V is what they called him if you live in southern Utah. He grew up in Parowan, Utah, played for Parowan High School, played at BYU, and was an all-conference player. For a number of years, held the single game rebound record, 26 rebounds in one game, and he did it 2 nights in a row, and it's a great story. But so my dad was a huge BYU fan naturally, and so it just was in my blood.
Yeah.
And I was in high school playing football, and was beginning to be recruited mostly by smaller schools, but BYU actually started recruiting me. And
did you know? I don't know what years he played football. Troy Long.
Yeah.
Troy Long. I work with his wife at my job, my day job. Yeah.
So my freshman year, Troy was probably a senior or a junior, but he was the starting strong safety when I came in as a freshman. And when you're a freshman, you're what, meat squad or prep team is what they call you. Basically, you're there to run the opposing team's plays for the starting defense. So it's, Troy Long and all the starters on defense, and we would run the plays and do all that. And I got hit by Troy Long one time so hard. Like, I went up to catch it, and he just right in my back, like, just almost split me in half. And I honestly almost peed my pants.
Really?
It hurt so bad.
Any major injuries besides that in football? I mean, you thought?
Well, the reason I had to quit, so I played a few years, but I had to quit because I had a ruptured disc. Not from that, but I had a ruptured disc in my back.
Oh, wow.
And so I had to get back surgery and was forced to quit.
You still deal with back problems from that then, or not?
No, I had the surgery. I was doing great. Kind of allowed myself to get quite out of shape for a while. And at that point, everything was great, but then I got out of shape and I was doing a lot of traveling for work. So I was sitting on airplanes and I started really having some issues with my back. And, so my wife was actually the one, she suggested, she said, well, our insurance will allow you to, go to a physical therapist a few times a year or whatever. So I did that. They gave me a bunch of exercises. I started getting back in shape. I do those exercises to this day, every day, and my back's fine.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I ski, I water ski, I do, so anytime I meet
so you're a pretty physical person. I
Yeah.
mean, you get out there and move around. You're not a stagnant person.
Yeah. So anytime that I meet somebody who has back problems, I tell them
What to
that
do.
story. I say, go talk to a physical therapist, get the exercises. Maybe you'll have to have surgery at some point, but you get these exercises and they know what to do. And I'm telling you, it works. Works
So
for me.
did you go to BYU then to become a broadcast journalist then? Is that what you went to school for? At what point? What did you go to school for?
Yeah.
Besides
I went there to
football?
play football.
Strictly football.
Yeah,
Boom. That's it.
I went there to play football and basically have a good time. And my story is this. I went to BYU. I got kicked out for breaking the rules. I got back in and I did graduate from BYU. So, there was that whole story there where, I went to college thinking I'm going to be a normal college kid. And, that didn't work out. I do not.
So at what point did you get interested in broadcast journalism then?
Well, after I had to quit football.
After you quit.
Yeah. So I'd quit football, because of the back surgery. And actually I'd kind of had some interest in it before. And then, at that point, it's funny because when you play football, all your afternoons are filled with practice and working out and training table and all those different things. So basically you have to get all your classes in before about 1 p.m. if you play not just football, but pretty much any sport.
Does that make doing homework tough?
Well, but also, all of the broadcasting classes were afternoon classes.
Okay.
When you got into the higher levels, you could take Comms 101 and all of that, and that was regular time. But if you wanted to do the KBYU newscasts and everything like that, those were afternoon classes. So if I would have kept playing football, I never would have been able to go into what I do now for a living.
But did you honestly see football as, was your hopes to get into like the NFL?
I had no illusions of that.
You had no illusions of that.
No, my big thing was, and I got out of it what I wanted. I wanted to travel. I wanted to be part of the team. I wanted to play, the only thing, it's kind of a bummer because I had a couple years left to play, and I would have been playing quite a bit more than I'd been playing up to that point. Up to that point, I'd only played a little special teams and on JV. They used to have a JV team back then. They don't have one anymore. So my only regrets were I never got to really be a bigger part of the team.
I got you.
But I never had any illusions that I would be an NFL player or that, I would even be a star at BYU. I just wanted to be a more significant contributor and, and I got injured and never had that chance.
So when you started taking broadcast journalism classes or just journalism classes in general, what led you to being a meteorologist then?
Well, so then
share that story.
I'd always been interested in weather just simply because because I ski, I water ski. I'm just into the outdoors that way. I'm not a big hiker, but I do, I run a lot. And so I'd always been and then I always played sports that were outside, football and track and everything like that. So
it was important to keep up with what the weather was.
So I just always was into the weather.
And
it wasn't as much of a scientific thirst for knowledge. Some people love that. And I've learned to totally love it. It's so interesting how everything works. But that wasn't my first love. It was more about, I was always in the weather. And so I just had a big interest in it. So I was doing the broadcasting classes. I started looking at sports. I said, I don't want to do sports because, if you love sports, being a sports broadcaster is not that great because you're working. You're not able to sit there and watch the game and enjoy it. So, I was kind of looking at what I wanted to do, and I had an ability to just stand up and talk without a teleprompter. And so that's what got me into weather. I actually had to get my meteorology degree from Mississippi State after.
Because they were the only school that offered that degree?
There's lots of schools like the University of Utah, but University of Utah has a meteorology degree and a very good, they're an excellent school. But it's a full, you have to do your undergrad there as well. So I'd already done my undergrad and had my degree from BYU in broadcast communications. So I didn't want to have to redo an undergrad just to get the meteorology. So Mississippi State offers a course that is, you have to be, to have an undergrad degree to get into it.
I got
and then it's just the meteorology.
So you went out to Mississippi for that?
Yeah,
then.
It's you only take one trip out there. It's an online. It's accredited. It's not like an online university. It's Mississippi State, but it's 3 years of online courses, and then you go out to Mississippi to take a final exam, and then you also like in my case, you don't have to do this, but then I also took an exam and passed to get the National Weather Association certification. So
where did you mentioned Park City Television.
Mm-hmm.
You worked with them for a minute, because obviously you probably had other jobs before you teamed up with Fox 13.
Mm-hmm.
Where did
I go?
Yeah, where did you where was your first meteorologist job?
Well, so I got out of college, started working at Park City Television.
As a meteorologist, or no?
No, Park City Television at that point, they didn't even have any live programming.
Really?
And so, Bill Coleman was the person who owned it at that point, and he owned Prudential Coleman Real Estate. And they had broadcast some high school games when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And so I went to Bill and I said, "Hey, I'm a Park City graduate. I just graduated from BYU. I know all this about broadcasting. Do you need anybody to work for you?" And he was about ready to just walk away from the station, because it was a good tax write-off for a while, but at some point, he's like, as he put it, "I got to stop the hemorrhaging." It's just, it's just bleeding money. So I said, "I think we could make this work. Will you give me a shot?" He's like, "Yeah, I will." So he hired me and was willing to throw in a few more $1,000s to buy some good equipment. 'Cause I'm like, we can't do it with the equipment you have right now. And so, I love telling this story because there was me and, a guy by the name of Billy Fish, and Chris Barnes was another kid that worked there. And we were the only employees. And, we hooked up all the new equipment. We started taping a morning show, and then we'd run it the next day. And then, I was kind of looking at the equipment, and I saw that it had ins and outs, and it had, a chroma key function. And basically it was a big editor that we had, but it had all this function that if I could figure out how to make it go live, we could do a live show. And I was talking with Billy, and I'm like, if we just took video in here and took video out here and ran it back and did this, I think we can do a live show.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So we waited till it was late at night, because we had to rewire the whole station to do
You didn't
this.
want to screw anything up. Yeah.
So we didn't want to take the chance people actually watching while we did this. We unplugged the station, like literally took our signal off the air, routed that through the machine, rerouted everything, boom, went on air, and we're like, okay, it seems to be working. And we're like,
are we live?
Yeah.
Are we live?
Well,
Check. Go turn the TV
and so
on.
We're like, well, we'll try this tomorrow morning. And so we got up, we did it, and it worked. So we did our live show, and then we started thinking, well, and so then, it was so small at the point. It was literally a time where we got some wood. When you do weather, you may have heard about a chroma key, which is what's actually behind the weather person. Well, we had to go buy some wood. We had to buy some chroma key paint and paint this wood, and then kind of light it ourselves and everything. And we started doing weather, and we had the weather graphics that we bought from Weather Bank at the time. And so we just started doing it. And
so you were at the roots of that.
Yeah,
you built that. You helped build really what it is today with Park City Television, the live, the weather, all that.
In fact, when we were there, we were an affiliate of, it was at that point called Resort Sports Network, RSN, but now it's Outside Television. Same company, same people, but just bigger. We won the award as the most improved affiliate, because we went from doing zero live programming to all of a sudden we were doing about 4 hours a day. We did a morning show, an afternoon show, Our morning show was a few hours long. I mean, we just totally changed the way that whole thing
And were you
operated.
part of all the show, the morning, the afternoon, or just?
Well, what we did is I did the morning show. Me and then Billy was the other, Billy Fish was his name. And he would direct it. He had no interest in being on TV, but he loved the directing and all of that. So,
you were more interested in the TV part. You were more interested in being on the TV than.
And here's what I mean. It was like what we're doing right now. I mean, it was as close to podcasting as you can get, but it was broadcasting, on TV. And he would sit in the other room and he would yell. He'd be like, "You're on air." I mean, you could hear him. I mean, it was just crazy. And so we did that, and then Chris, the other guy, Chris Barnes, he did the afternoon show. And we would often take off and go skiing or do whatever, and Billy would kind of direct them both. But we would shoot the morning show, we'd go ski for a few hours, we'd come back and they'd shoot the afternoon show, and I would do all the because I eventually got promoted just to general manager, so I would do sales and I would do everything like that in the afternoon while they were shooting the afternoon show. And we turned it around. Like it was losing money to the point where he was ready to get rid of the station. And when we were there, within about a year and a half, we turned the first profit in the history of the station. So we actually made money, and then we brought in, some interns and even a couple more, part-time employees. And
so where did you go from Park City Television then?
To Channel 4.
Channel 4. Here in Salt Lake.
KTVX. So what happened there is, they had a weatherman.
Was there a reason? Just something bigger, something more? I mean, what made you
the station was bought. Park City was bought by. I was always wondering if I could do it for real. This was fun and it was cool and it was resort.
How old were you approximately, if you don't mind me asking?
I was in my
low
20s.
Low 20s at this time. Yeah. So you were just eating it up and you were just having a blast.
Just having a blast. And but I wasn't making any money, and I was starting to think, is this something that I could really do for a living? And it was funny. I went back to a conference, Resort Sports Network, and the person who ran the Vail station, which was a big and is still a big money station, much like Park City Television is today, like a pretty good money maker and well respected within resort communities and everything. And he was running it, and he's like, "I'll hire you tomorrow." He's like, "But you should really look to see if you could do this at a normal broadcast station." He's like, "You're pretty good." So I had a friend, Mark Walker, who actually now is the VP of communications for ESA, or not ESA, but Energy Solutions.
Okay.
Mark Walker was a producer at Channel 4, and I used to watch their morning show from time to time, and they had a weather guy who all of a sudden wasn't there. So I said, I'm going to give it a shot, because I knew Mark from college. So I called up Mark and I said, "Do you guys need a weather guy?" And he's like, "Funny you should ask, because we are looking." And he's like, "Get me a tape and I'll give it to our news director." News director was named John Edwards. So again, just pieced it together, because here we are, we're on a wood chroma key. We did our best to make it look professional, but I did what I did and sent it off to Mark. He gave it to John Edwards, who's the news director, and John's like, "I want to talk to him." Brought me in, interviewed me. Long story short, they had me actually try out on a real set with, all of the equipment, and Dan Pope was there at that time and kind of helped me and gave me some tips, and they gave me the job. So I was working there. Well, a couple weeks after I was hired, John Edwards was fired, which is probably the biggest mistake
that they could make,
that KTVX ever made. He had been there for a number of years. At that point, KTVX was number 2 at 10 and number 1 at 5, and we were in the morning. We were number 1 or number 2 all the time. I mean, they were a very strong station. They had Kimberly Perkins, they had Randall Carlisle, they had some
big names. Good names,
and the
big
people
names
that are KTVX now are great. This was many management teams ago.
Yeah.
And John Edwards was a very good news director, and they got rid of him. They brought in a new guy, and his name was Tom Sides, and he was basically, he went through, found people who had short-term contracts, which I was one of them, and he said, "We're not going to renew you because I want my people in here."
He wasn't going to renew you.
Yeah. So they let me finish my contract, but that was it. Boom, done. So at that point, I'm like, I am finished with TV. This is ridiculous, because
you had nothing lined up though. You were done. You're finished. Yeah. Wow.
Mm-hmm. So, and I I was just like, to me, it was frustrating because I was like, there was nothing I could do. I mean, it didn't matter if I was good or bad or whatever. He just wanted to put his people in because he was a new news director. And this happens in TV and it happens in a lot of businesses. But so I got out of TV. I started doing sales and doing some other stuff. And a few years after that, or maybe a year or two later,
were you enjoying, though, that different pace of life, the sales, being off of the TV, off of the spotlight a little bit? Were you enjoying that?
Well, I just gotten the taste of it, so I kind of missed it. I was like,
you miss sales. You missed TV.
I missed TV
okay. So you just got a little taste of it.
Yeah, I just gotten into this, and I was doing it for real, and I just felt like the rug was pulled out from under me.
Absolutely.
And I was just like,
I'm just getting the hang of this, guys. Come on. What are you doing?
I'd done good things at Park City Television. I felt like I did okay at Channel 4 but it didn't work out. So I was doing this, but I always kind of just kept my eye thinking about it. Well, when I was at Channel 4, I knew a producer named Jane. And one night I saw her out at a club and, so I was like, hey, Jane, how's it going? Good. How you doing? She's like, this is Jeff Roth, the news director at Fox 13. And I was like, I was like, Jeff, if you ever need a weather guy, let me know. And he's like, because he kind of remembered me from when I was on Channel 4. And he's like, all right, I'll think about that, freelance, whatever. Well, shortly after that, Jeff Roth got a job at another TV station, but Renee Bodley became the news director at Fox 13. And I said, you know what? I just have to follow up on this. So I called Renee out of the blue and I said, look, my name's Brett Benson. I used to work at Channel 4. I talked with Jeff, but he just left. I know, but he'd said that there might be room for me at some point to do freelance. I just wanted to give you my name. And if you ever need it, just give me a call. So she's like, well, let me have you come in and just try out. She goes, we don't have anything right now. But let me have you try out. So came in, did a weathercast. She's like, actually, I think you'd be just fine. And if we ever need a freelancer, if somebody's just taking vacation, I'll give you a call.
And who was doing weather at that time?
It was Henry Stone. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure Jody was there at that point.
Okay.
Jody Salem was on at 9 and Henry was on in the morning. And, just when they would take vacation, and Steve Barron was on the weekends. And so sometimes, Steve would either have to be reporting or they would take vacations and just didn't have enough people to fill. They would bring me in. And so I just started doing it again every once in a while. And so I did that for a number of years and it was great. I had my regular job and then every once in a while I'd fill in on Fox 13 and it was fine. But then my wife and I moved to Portland. We moved to Madison. And finally
what took you to Portland? What
my wife got a great offer there. And the company I was working for was like, yeah, we'll let you work remotely from Portland because it was like an information technology recruiting company. So didn't really matter where I was.
And Portland's beautiful.
Yeah. So it was a chance to move. And that was what my wife and I, we had a 6-month-old baby, brand new baby, not even 6. She was like 3 months old. And we're like, this is the worst time in our lives to move.
To be doing this with little
but we're
infant.
like, if we don't do it, we'll never do it.
Yeah.
So let's just do it. And so, we rented our house and moved to Portland, lived in a 1-bedroom apartment and everything like that. But it was, so that was working. And even when I was in Portland, they would have me come in and fill in from time to time.
Who would have you come in?
Fox 13.
They would do it remotely or?
No, they'd fly me in.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was over things like I would come back for Christmas vacation.
Yeah.
And for me, it was great because it would just pay for my whole family to come back to Utah for Christmas because my wife's from here too.
And so she had family here.
Yeah.
And you
so
had family
I would
here
go do the weather, and miss a few family functions or whatever, but it was no big deal because my whole family was back here. It worked out really well for us. Well, but when we moved to Madison, then it was like, this is too far. So we moved to Madison, Wisconsin because I got a job, selling, weather systems for Weather Central. So, the systems that create all the graphics and everything that you see behind the weather person.
That's what you sold.
That's what I sold.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we moved to Madison, Wisconsin, and I figured that's it. I'm done with TV.
This is what I want to do. I want to sell weather systems.
I'm going to sell systems. I was making good money. we fell in love with Madison.
Did you have to experience the winters though? Don't they have brutal winters in
horrible
Minnesota?
winters?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it's so much worse.
I have relatives in Minnesota, and it's not too far from Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's 4 hours.
Ooh,
yeah,
winters are just brutal.
It is horrible. It is so much colder, and the snow is not light and fluffy. It's not, it's tough. The summers are beautiful.
Yeah.
And everybody does everything they can during the summers because, once it becomes winter,
you hibernate.
It's hard to get out.
Become a bear. Yeah. So you're selling these weather system deal things in Madison. How long did you do that for then? What?
Did that for about 5 years.
About 5 years.
And my poor wife, like she was in Madison, and actually got a job at a great company in Madison. But I was traveling. And so during these horrible, terrible winters, I would schedule trips to Miami and Tampa and, the Southeast US and
just to get out of there, just to.
Yeah.
So I imagine eventually Fox contacted you then. Is that what brought you back to Utah then? Is kind of to get a full-time gig with them.
Yeah. So then, and I'd gone to school at this point, had my meteorology degree and everything like that.
So you weren't even finished up with school at this point then. You were still trying to get school done.
My meteorology. Yeah. I had my undergrad.
Okay.
I had that degree, but I just didn't have any kind of meteorology training, but I was getting it during all of this time. So I was learning about the actual science while I was doing the fill-in and everything like that. So, and then also working at Weather Central, just with the weather systems, you have to know meteorology and everything we had to help program models and do some sort of things. So I learned a lot there, and I had to have that meteorology background to sell these systems. So I'd gained it. And then Steve Barron, who was weekends here at Fox, his wife had a great opportunity in Chicago, and so he was moving, and it was tough. I mean, he really liked his job here and everything, and but he left, and when he left, Fox called me up and said, "Would you be at all interested?" And it was one of those things. It was right at my father had just died about a year earlier, or less than that, and the whole, everything about flying my whole family back because he was in the hospital, and it was just crazy. And it was so hard to just being away.
Do it all, yeah.
So my wife and I had already began discussions about, we love Madison, but wow, we have a lot of family back in Utah that, her parents and grandparents and my mom, are we going to have to do this several times where we're flying across the country at a minute's notice because someone's in a hospital? So we'd already began those discussions about maybe we need to look at moving back to Utah. And then they called. I mean, the timing was just crazy.
Fox called, yeah.
And so we looked at it. It was hard to leave. We'd fallen in love with Madison, but excuse me.
And so then so they called you up, full-time deal, being the weather guy then?
Yeah, so that first job was weekends and then reporting 3 days a week.
Uh-huh.
And so and that was, it was interesting because a lot of people go to school and they get their meteorology degree. They don't have a really decent communications background.
Yeah.
They know the science and and they get thrown into this position where they do the weekend weather, but then they have to report 3 days a week, and they struggle because they've never done that before. Whereas I had my communications degree from BYU. I had done all the reporting and anchoring and all these other things.
So you had that experience.
Yeah. And then I had the meteorology from, all these other years. So it worked out pretty well. I was able to just kind of get in there, do the weather. And then also, I wasn't the best reporter, but I wasn't the worst.
Yeah. What do you think makes a good meteorologist? Obviously there's a lot of them out there. Do you think something sets one apart than the rest? Or
I think anyone who I often get the statement or the question of, why would I watch the weather when I can get it from my iPhone? So
because don't they just pull it all from one?
Well, see, for me,
one box, one computer.
How it works is you have so there's several different models. So all models are, so you take the current state of the atmosphere, what the wind speeds are, temperature, dew points, blah, 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 all this. And then you take mathematical equations and say, okay, well, if it's like this now and this is happening, all these equations, and we're talking trillions of equations, have to happen in order to run these models. What's going to happen with the atmosphere 6 hours from now, 12 hours from now, 18 hours from now. And so you have all these different models. Well, you can just take raw model output and plug that into something. And that's what your iPhone does. And that's what the Weather Channel does, because they don't have meteorologists in Salt Lake City looking at that and saying this model is not right. Whereas when you have a local on-site meteorologist like me, I do that. I look at the model and I'm like,
So how many hours a day do you spend studying that then? I mean, I go in at 1:30. We have a little meeting, and then I'm from 2. So at 2:00, I start doing my forecast, and then the first show now is at 4. We used to have a show at 5. Or I used to have until 5. We still have the 5 o'clock. So we have a 4 o'clock newscast and a 5 o'clock newscast. So I have that 2 hours to look at, all the data and build my graphics. And I do that all myself. And then a lot of times, and it all depends on the weather. Like weather now, this is easy. I mean, high pressure's in place. It's sunny. It's beautiful when we're recording this. But then it's going to snow. But then it's going to snow tomorrow.
Yeah. So if it's a hard forecast, what I'll do, I mean, I have to be on at 4. And so I will do all the work I can. And then I go do the newscast. And many times it's like, I'd really like to have another look at a model or, the newest model come out and get a better idea of what's going to happen, but I just don't have that time.
Yeah.
And so, I go with what I know and then I'll just keep working. So we do our 4 o'clock and our 5 o'clock newscasts, and then we have between 6 and 9. And I'll do a lot of work then about, looking at the models. Okay. Are we on track? Yeah, this is working out. This is doing what I thought it would, everything like that. Because in addition to the extended forecast that you do with modeling, you're also, if there's weather happening, you're looking at radar, you're looking at satellite to determine what the rest of the night and tomorrow morning and tomorrow's going to be like.
Yeah. Have you ever gotten anybody just really, say, ticked off with, predicting wrong weather or being like, oh, you're always wrong, or,
we get those,
it would seem like such a hard job to have because you really, you could be pretty spot on, but it's still, you might be off a little bit.
Right. And that's, usually when someone says something to me like, oh, I wish I could, have a job where I was wrong half the time. And it's like,
and nobody gets mad at you.
Yeah. I'm like, there are times we are wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. There are times, and I will say it on air. I'll be like, I thought it would do this. It didn't, and I'll explain what happened and that's what it is.
But with today's technology, you're probably more spot on.
Yeah, and much more often than not, what happens is we're right about the forecast. But what people don't realize is the weather that they are individually, what's happening to them is not necessarily what's happening to the vast majority of people around them. So, for example, you might have a thunderstorm, and we might, I might call for thunderstorms developing by 2 in the afternoon on a summer day. Like we're gonna have really strong thunderstorms moving through the Salt Lake Valley by 2 in the afternoon. Well, so that thunderstorm will happen at 2 in the afternoon, but it will be from, say, 53rd South north. So everyone there is like, oh, he was right. Everybody south of there is like, they said we'd have thunderstorms, and so it's like, to try and predict on that small of a scale.
Well, especially in such a large valley like the Salt Lake Valley.
Well, and we have to forecast for the whole state.
Yeah.
So it's not like I have to talk about, Salt Lake Valley and Ogden and Provo, and then I have to talk about St. George and Cedar City and
then all those dead areas in between.
Yeah, Mount Pleasant and the central Utahs and Vernal and, so it's a huge state and I got 3 minutes, so I try to give as much detail as I can. And I think that's what makes a good meteorologist. Back to your original question.
Yeah.
I have to give people more than what their iPhone will give them. Their iPhone will give them partly cloudy, 40% chance of thunderstorms. So
and that's why people come to you, because they want more of that localized.
So what I'll do is I'll try to say, okay, partly cloudy. I won't say 40% chance of thunderstorms. I'll say we'll have thunderstorms, and here's where I think they're going to be, and here's when I think they're going to hit. And I'll try to be as detailed as possible, so you're not looking at your phone going, well, what does a 40% chance of thunderstorms mean? Does that mean we're going to have them or not? And so that's that's what I try to do.
Do you think that like the smartphone and, everybody has, an Android or an iPhone, do you think that has made it so people aren't as dependent on local weather, or do you think people still seek out local weather?
I think they think they don't need to be,
but they should.
And when someone says, I'll just look at my iPhone, I'll be like, just try that. I'm like, that's fine. But try that when you really have to count on that forecast. Like when your son or daughter has a soccer game at 3 p.m. on a summer day.
Yeah,
and there's a chance
you want to know what's
thunderstorms.
Going on.
Yeah. And you want to know, are we really getting thunderstorms? Have they started? Where are they? Have they started? Are they coming? I think the more you can provide that type of information of, okay, here's where the thunderstorms are now. Here's where they're going to be. And it's not just thunderstorms, it's snow, and it's, here. Yeah, we said it was going to snow today. And I always try to say, I think it'll start snowing by this time.
Yeah.
Because that's more than whether people get 2 inches or 3 inches. I think it matters more to most people of when is it going to hit.
Yeah. Before the commute home, on the commute to work and whatnot. So in all the years of doing weather, is there like a weather event that you'll never forget? Or is there like a really big, in Utah, it's not like we get tornadoes or anything like that.
There is the downtown, the Salt Lake downtown tornado. I'll never forget that. I wasn't working in meteorology though at the time, or I wasn't working in TV. But I'll never forget that because I was working at another company and I walked into work after lunch and they're like, there was a tornado in downtown Salt Lake.
Was that the one that went through Memory Grove? Yeah.
And I used to live, in Capitol Hill. I mean, it was right by my house, but they're like, oh, there's a tornado in downtown Salt Lake. I'm like, no, there wasn't. It was a straight line wind or a microburst, but it wasn't a tornado. And then,
what year?
And then I found out.
What year was that?
It was about 12 years ago. So.
Yeah, it was 2000, like 2002, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm trying to think now.
Rough idea. I just, for people listening, because a lot of people, I remember I took pictures.
I want to say 2001,
and started talking about the tornado, and a lot of people didn't even know about that.
Yeah. Well, and so then I found out it was a tornado, and then I had to drive home, and I was working south of at that time it was the Delta Center, and I lived north of the Delta Center, and there was no way to get in between those 2 points because it was just completely, it looked like a war zone when that tornado ripped through there. And so I had to park my car and walk all through that area to get to my house. And that was crazy. And then the other big weather event was when we were living, this is when we still lived in Madison, and we were going to Disney World for the first time with our little daughter. And there was a hurricane coming towards Orlando. And I told Christy, my wife, I'm like, look, if we wait for this hurricane to hit, we were scheduled to land, like basically during the middle of the hurricane. And I was like, there's no way we'll land. And the airport's going to be shut down for 3 days. I think we should fly in early. And she's like, what? You want to sit through a hurricane? I'm like, look, we can handle this. It's okay. It's not that big. And Orlando's not on the coast. And so I talked her into it. So we did. We flew down into Orlando about 2 days early. We were one of the last jets they allowed to land. We got in our rental car. We got to our place and just hunkered down for the next 24 hours. And it was funny. I called Disney World, not Disneyland, Disney World right before the hurricane. And I was like, so the hurricane's going to hit. When are you guys going to be open? And they're like, we'll be open at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Yeah. They're like, cause all their power lines are buried and they've built their park thinking about hurricanes. So sure enough, it's like hurricane blows through. We get up the next morning. Power's still out in a lot of areas. We hop in our car, we drive to Disney World, and they're open and ready for business.
And you're ready to have fun.
Yeah, it was awesome.
One thing I like to ask people I always bring on the show, with this being a Salt Lake City podcast, is, I like to find out a little bit, what do you like about living here? What do you like about living in Salt Lake? Obviously something keeps bringing you back. Besides family.
Well, family's a big part of it, but I love to ski. Okay. And I live at the mouth of Little Cottonwood Canyon. And so, and I work in the afternoons. So I'll get up
some morning.
Yeah.
Done.
So I get up and, take my kids to school, and they're usually dropped off by, at the latest, about 8:50. Snowbird opens at 9.
Boom. You're ready.
I can get there by first chair. That's how close, so yeah. I drop my son off I drop my daughter off. She starts earlier, and then I drop my son off, and then I just race up to Snowbird and ski for a few hours, and then I'm back down, get cleaned up, and I'm in at work. And
what about snowboarding? You get into snowboarding?
I snowboarded exclusively for about 6 years.
Really?
Yeah. When I lived in Park City, and
why exclusively? Why not?
I'd grown up skiing.
Yeah.
I'd grown up skiing, and then I got into snowboarding, and I loved it. I mean, it was just so much fun, and so I couldn't get enough of it, and that's all I did for a while. And then as a friend wanted to go to Alta real bad, and so I was like, I got to rent skis. But now all of a sudden that technology had changed. Like all of a sudden skis were a lot more fun and just better. You know, they started designing skis like miniature snowboards, which made them better in powder and easier to carve and just do all these things. And I started skiing again. I'm like, whoa, this is a lot of fun. And so I did both for a while, and then I finally got so much into skiing again. I've switched back. I'm a skier.
Does the rest of your family ski? Does the wife get out and ski with you at all? Or?
Yeah. So
everybody gets out and enjoys it with you.
She'd grown up here and never skied. And she tried to learn snowboarding, and she was getting better, but she just didn't do it enough to get good at it, and was getting frustrated. And then we were getting our kids ski lessons, and I wanted them to learn how to ski first. And I'm like, if you want to learn how to snowboard later, you can, but I want you to ski first. And so then my wife's like, well, what if I took ski lessons too? And I'm like, you should try it. And she loves it.
I always ask also favorite local eating spots. You know, I'm always out to promote local.
Yeah.
You know, obviously. Do you have any favorite places that Brett Benson likes to eat at?
Do you know where the Grove Deli is?
Oh, absolutely.
Love Grove Deli.
Okay.
I used to go there. It's so funny. I used to go there in high school. And if you can believe this, I used to eat, well, I never finished the second, but I would get 2 Big Johns.
Really?
Yeah. And
wow.
I mean, I was playing basketball, you know, and I had a really good friend of mine, Jason Schlinsky, he now lives in Hawaii. But we were, we would go down and we would eat a Grove, and then we were like, well, that's not enough. And we would get a whole second one and try to finish it. We never would, but.
You still go there a lot then?
Not that often, but I was actually there just about a week ago. A good friend was in town, Scott Cartier, and, we were trying to meet up. And I was in Bountiful doing a school talk, and I was like, hey, you know, and he was coming down to Salt Lake, and I'm like, where are you? And he's like, I'm at the Grove. I'm like, I'll be right there. So I went there just about a week ago.
Awesome.
So good. Yeah.
Awesome. Any other places?
I love the Grove. So I love, I've always loved the Soup Kitchen.
Excellent.
Those places. Yeah. I love those places. In fact, I was thinking, is the one over here, do you know about the one on, what is it, 5th North or 6th North? There used to be one right over here.
Really?
6th North. And I don't know if it's still here.
Is it the one by the overpass?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it still there?
Yeah. As far as I know of, it's still there. Yeah.
I'm planning on going there for lunch right after we're done.
Excellent. Great sandwiches.
I love those. I'm trying to think of.
Well, no, I know it's tough. You know, the mind always gets blank. You're like, where have I eaten at? You know, I'm always curious. You know, even recommendations for myself.
I'm a big sandwich guy, so
you know, or people even listening. You know, I get emails of people that are moving to Salt Lake, and they're like, I find your podcast to be so informative to know what's going on in Salt Lake. Anything you're looking forward to this summer, or no,
one more place I want to mention.
Yeah.
I love is called it's Mila Kai, and it's down on. I think it's on State. It's kind of it's about 9th. What is that? 9th South right around State Street, and it's a Vietnamese noodle house.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Oh, it is amazing. I love that place.
Yeah, I think I tried that. It was a while back, but it was delicious. But
anyway.
Do you get out and hike in the summer at all, or camp, or is that?
We do a little bit of camping, and a little bit of hiking. I've never been a big hiker, which kills. My wife loves to hike, and so she's always just like, "Why don't you?" And I've always just been like, "Well, if I'm going to work that hard, I want to be doing something, you know,
something you enjoy more."
Yeah, if I'm going to climb that mountain, I want to. You know, ski down it or do something like that. But, we camp every once in a while. You know, we have so much fun when we camp.
You just get out and enjoy some of that Utah outdoors.
Yeah. And my brother has a ski boat, so we go skiing a lot, and, sometimes we'll camp and then ski and then
awesome
do that. So,
well, how can I appreciate you sitting down and chatting with me and finding out a little bit about your story. I mean, how can people, I know you're on Twitter.
Yes.
And when can people catch you on Fox? I mean, what?
All right. So let's go down the list here. We have a 4:00 newscast, a 5:00 newscast, and a 9:00 newscast. So those Monday through Friday. So
and you're on all of them.
4 to 5, 5 to 6, and then 9 to 10. And then my Twitter is @BensonWeather, and then I'm on Facebook, and I try to. Here's where again I think I'm a little different than a lot of weather guys. Like there's a lot of weather people that will post a ton of weather stuff, and I do a lot of weather stuff too. I pictures and I'll post models sometimes and things like that. But I also just throw random stuff up there and I get a lot of ski pictures.
Yeah.
And so I'll do a lot of pictures
on your Twitter or on your Facebook or on both.
Both.
Yeah.
And I just try to share what I find is a lot of times what I think is funny.
Do you get into all that social media? I mean, do you enjoy it?
I like it okay. I wasn't. At first. I did it because I had to at work.
You have to do it.
They're like, we want you to have a Twitter account. But I kind of enjoy it. Like I follow a lot of funny people on Twitter, so that's
that's what makes Twitter fun. Is there funny jokes?
Yeah. The internet is it is a funny place. I mean, when people get on a roll about something and you start following just some funny hashtags, and it is fun. It's great.
Anything else you want to add before we end here?
No, I really appreciate it. I think what you're doing is so cool. I mean, again, I look at this like little Park City Television. I look at podcasting that same way. It's just people who love what they do. They, in your case, love where they live. They love the people. They want to share stories, and I think this is cool.
All right, many thanks goes out to Brett Benson for coming on this episode of the podcast. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I was really honored that he would sit down with me for a little while as he shared his story and shared his story with the rest of Salt Lake City, Utah. Again, I'm going to put all the show notes where you can connect with Brett on Facebook and Twitter, all right there at iamsaltlake.com/141. If you haven't left the podcast a review in iTunes, please, that means so much to me. Helps boost our ratings, gets us exposed to more people. That way more people find out about the show. And plus, it's nice just to get some feedback from you guys. So thank you to those of you that have left reviews in iTunes. You can also leave reviews in Stitcher Radio. That helps boost our ratings there. Again, all of the links are at iamsaltlake.com. That's going to do it for this episode. Again, like I said, I dropped 2 episodes this week, so make sure to check out the other episode with Christopher James. I'll be back again on Monday. I got a really great episode for you guys on Monday, so make sure to subscribe in iTunes, Stitcher Radio, however you consume podcasts. And until then, get out, support local, and enjoy the city that you live in.